I'm a strategic intervention coach, and I specialize in relationships and communication. And what I'm going to be talking about today is this escalating pattern that can occur in our communications. It builds up and it creates these bones of contention that ultimately cause the relationship to fail. So, why is communication so important? If you think about it, the quality of our lives is really the quality of our communication. How we communicate with ourselves and others is really what determines what anything means. And that meaning is what creates the emotions that we feel. And emotions are the fuel of our actions, right? And all of our outcomes are really based on all the actions that we take. This process I'm going to talk about this morning, it was actually discovered by two relationship therapists who were married. And they ended up getting divorced. They continued to work together because they really wanted to understand why two experts in the field who people paid to have them coach them on their relationships, to tell them how they can be successful, ended up not being successful in their own relationship. And what they ended up discovering was this pattern. They ended up calling it the 4 R's. So, I don't drink and I don't smoke. What do I do? Well, a strategic interventionist is really kind of just a glorified way of saying that people pay me to help them help themselves. More importantly, I'm a husband. My wife, she is an amazing, incredible woman. She is talented, she's creative, she's funny. She didn't pay me to say any of this. And thankfully, she's also very understanding and forgiving. I am the very proud father of 2 outstanding young men who, they regularly school me, and not just in video games, but also with the authentic communication of their hearts. Sorry. I'm also a writer, a speaker, and I'm a board game enthusiast. In fact, if you've been around the hotel the past couple of days, you may have noticed me and my boys sequestered at a table, laughing and oftentimes arguing over some obscure rule book. Speaking of my boys, and just to be clear, this is not a picture of them. Okay? When they were really young, they really got into this show. You may have heard of it, called Power Rangers. I mean, they were into it. They had the toys, the clothes, the jammies, the bedding, the posters, the DVDs with the shows on them, so we could watch the same one over and over and over again. The thing was, they really enjoyed it, and they were very enthusiastic about it. And their enthusiasm was really infectious. And so I ended up enjoying the show as well. Except for one little thing. This pattern that kept happening in every show, repeating over and over again. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but this is what happens in every single show. Eventually the monster shows up, and it's normal sized, and then the Power Rangers it's morphin' time! And they jump in their really cool spandex suits, and they come running down there, and they start battling it out. And without fail, every single time, the monster, he grows and becomes ginormous. And so the Power Rangers, they run over and they get in their equally ginormous Megazord. And they come back and they start battling it out again. In the middle of the city. Right? Eventually, after about half of the buildings have been destroyed, they reach inside and they pull out their Ultra Mega Man Megazord sword and they, bam! Monster beaten, problem solved. And my boys are like, yay, Power Rangers. And I'm like, really? I mean, come on, guys, this happens every single time. After this time, haven't you learned? How about this time when the monster shows up? You guys go over there and you get in that giant Megazord, and you come over there and you take care of that problem, right? From the very beginning. Why didn't they do that? And I started thinking, why don't we do that? Why don't we deal with the monsters when they're little? Why do we wait until they're the size of Godzilla and they're rampaging through downtown Tokyo, or even worse, our workplace? In business, relationships are really the bones of any business. the way we communicate with our customers, both internal and external, that's what creates the framework, the skeleton that supports anything that we want to create or sustain. Communication is the way we move those bones, right? It's the way that we move the people in the relationships. Poor communication equals poor movement. And what happens to bones when you start moving them poorly? Well, eventually you get an injury. Sometimes you fall. Sometimes things break. One of the easiest tools that I've found to really deal with these monsters, to keep them small, to keep the bones of our relationship strong and healthy, is this process, the 4 R's. The first R is resistance, or it's when something happens. You know, a coworker, a boss, a manager, somebody says or does something that it kind of irritates us. It annoys us. It creates some resistance inside of us. But at this point, we don't want to communicate it. We keep it internal. We're almost afraid that if we do speak about it, we'll end up making it bigger. And so we decide at this point, you know what? I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to take a nice, big, deep breath and move on. And then it happens again. And it happens again. And it happens again. And now, because we haven't dealt with it, now all we've done is feed that monster. And the monster does what all good little monsters do when you feed it, right? It starts to grow. And now it turns into the second R. Resentment, or at this stage, we're not just annoyed anymore. Now we're starting to get angry. Now we're starting to get pissed off that this keeps happening. At this stage, you have some chance of at least kind of dealing with the monster a bit. The emotion about it has gotten big enough that will actually threshold. You know, we want to talk about it. We want to let the person know that this is upsetting us. The problem is that energy that we bring with that, anger and frustration, usually elicits the same response in the person we're trying to communicate with. They end up getting angry and defensive. And then, unfortunately, things don't really get resolved. You may feel like you've cleared the air. The person may feel heard, but they don't really feel understood. And when it comes to relationships, understanding is critical. If you don't understand me, I don't really feel that you can relate to how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing. And if you can't relate, there's no relationship. And again, this monster hasn't been taken care of, so it keeps feeding, it keeps gnawing away at you, and it turns in the third R, rejection, or at this point, we're not just angry anymore, now we're hurt. We don't feel like the person cares enough to really understand what we're experiencing. It doesn't seem like they want to connect with us. The strategy at this point is one of separation. We reject the other person. Gone are the social communications that happen in the workplace. We're no longer stopping by their cubicle or their office and saying, hey, how you doing? How are things going? How's the wife? How are the kids? Do you need anything? Can I help? When it comes to the workplace, these types of social interactions are really the canary in the mine shaft. If that's dead, the relationship's dying as well. This monster actually has the best chance of getting some resolution, being taken care of. At our core, we're really about connection. We love connecting with people, right? And the separation causes enough pain that somebody will usually extend an olive branch. They'll wave the white flag. They'll reach out to the other person. And because of that way that they're reaching out, they're kind of open, they're caring, and the other person has a tendency to respond the same way. They reach out, and they're open as well. And that creates a feeling that this person cares, They understand what we're going through. They can relate to us, and the relationship is reestablished. But that's not always the way we respond to this monster, is it? Sometimes our response is, you know what? You don't want to talk to me? I don't want to talk to you even more. In fact, this is great. This is perfect. I'm going to get even more done now that I don't have to listen to what's happening with your kids or listening to what your plans for the weekend are. Oh, I can't wait to see how much work I get done now. The thing is, though, it's not perfect, and it's not productive. And now, this monster is going to grow into the biggest and most dangerous monster of all. Repression, or this monster is really deceptive. On the outside, it looks like everything's fine. Things have been resolved. People have decided to put everything behind them and just move on. But nothing has been resolved. What's happened is that people have become resigned. They're resigned to things not changing, nothing ever happening, the relationship not growing. And if there's one thing that's true in life, if things aren't growing, they're dying. If your relationship isn't growing, it's dying. If your business isn't growing, it's dying. And at this point with this monster, the clock's really ticking. This monster, it gets taken care of. Somebody on either side of the relationship is going to call it quits. So the thing is that it really goes deeper than just these kind of social interactions we've been talking about. Really consider, what cost does it have to our business when we've got monsters like this running around? What does it cost to performance, job satisfaction, productivity, morale, absenteeism, retention? So the thing is, of course, we don't want to have these monsters in our business area. So what really is the best way of dealing with them? Now that we understand this life cycle, what causes them to grow, how do we keep them small? The thing is, we've got to focus. We've got to focus on opening people, not just doors. What good is an open door policy if the person who comes through that door doesn't feel that we're open to listening to them and to understanding what they need? We have to remember that what we look for, we find. What we listen for, we hear. And what we expect is exactly what we experience. It's about embracing the idea of positive intent. That behind all of this resistance and resentment and rejection is someone just like us. Someone who, more than anything, just wants to know, or at least feel that they're successful, that they add value, and that they make a real contribution. And we need to use the three most important bones in our body. We need to use our backbone. What we're talking about here is really emotional fitness. And like physical fitness, you don't just go to the gym once and then you're fit for life. Although, boy, that would really cool. You know. It's about discipline. It's about conditioning. The second thing is we need to use our funny bone. When things are stressful, when there's a lot of tension, nothing breaks that pattern. Nothing breaks somebody's state like humor, like laughter. I mean, do you really know anybody who authentically can stay angry and laugh at the same time? I mean, maybe outside the joker, that guy's insane. You really don't want him working for you. And lastly, we really need to use our wishbone. We need to create a vision for our relationships, our outcomes, our communication, one that's transformational, is empowering, and is fulfilling for everyone involved.